I was the one who sent her to the afterlife," sneered the killer who had taken my mother-in-law's life. Shivers ran down my spine with fear, and despite the lack of heat, cold sweat poured down my face. In my hand, I clutched a photograph of my mother-in-law, her face brutally torn. Unbelievably, written on the back were these words: "Looks like you're next." The criminal inched menacingly closer to me. Desperately, I fled from there. "My name is Ava. It's been about 5 years since I married my husband, Ben. We've always been close to my in-laws, and since Ben is an only child, we didn't want his parents to feel lonely. So, we visited their home about once a month. Mom, we're home. Welcome, Ben, Ava." My mother-in-law, Emily, always greeted us warmly. In contrast, my father-in-law, Ethan, would glance at us while reading his newspaper on the sofa, then return to his reading without a word of greeting. "Here's a little something for you." "Thank you, as always." Ben handed over a gift of pastries labeled super spicy buns in bold letters. My mother-in-law loved spicy food, but no one else in the family could handle it. "If you're going to bring a gift, at least bring something everyone can enjoy. She eats these alone and ends up with a stomachache every time. Hey, I told you not to tell Ben about my stomachaches. If I can't eat spicy food anymore, it'll be your fault." Their argument began, and I found myself trying to mediate. But my father-in-law snapped at me harshly. "Are you saying it's okay for Emily to get sick? I'm inconvenienced when she hogs the bathroom. Oh, come on, don't pick on Ava. And your way of speaking is terrible. Talk nicer to her, please." My attempt to mediate only added fuel to the fire, and their quarrel escalated. Then Ben stepped in to help. Sorry. I just know Mom enjoys the spicy food, so I can't help myself. Dad, I brought some pastries for you, too. Have some if you like." With that, Ben handed over another package to my father-in-law, and the situation calmed down. "I'm sorry about my husband, Ava. To apologize, I want to show you something." Emily led me to her room, where a beautifully patterned dress hung. "Wow, you always make such beautiful clothes." Emily had the hobby of tailoring clothes and making stuffed animals. She even ran an online shop selling her creations. Her sales were excellent, often selling out due to popularity and income. "I made this dress for you. Would you like to have it? But this is an important product for your store. I can't just take it for free." "It's fine. I tailored it especially for you. Try it on, I think it'll fit." When I tried on the dress, it fit perfectly, like it was made to order. Emily had a talent for knowing someone's measurements just by looking at them. "It really suits you." She smiled happily. Emily was always so kind to me, a mother figure, since I had lost my own mother at a very young age. Taking the dress home, Ben sighed and said, "Mom and Dad are always fighting. They might even get a divorce." Indeed, I had often seen them arguing. Perhaps they really weren't compatible. I always thought my mother-in-law must have had a tough time dealing with her gruff and ill-tempered husband. One day, it happened. My mother-in-law suddenly passed away. She had been in poor health for a while, and though I urged her to visit the hospital, she always insisted she was fine. I loved her dearly and regretted not insisting more strongly on taking her to the hospital. As her daughter-in-law, more out of affection than duty, I decided to help with the funeral arrangements, seeing it as my final act of gratitude towards her. Just before the funeral began, I wanted to memorize her face one last time, so I peeked into the coffin. My mother-in-law looked as gentle as ever, as if she were merely sleeping. Then, my eyes were drawn to a photograph among her belongings in the coffin. "What's this?" It appeared to be a normal photo of her. But her face had been savagely cut up, seemingly with a box cutter. On the back, it read, "Glad you finally made it to the other world," as if someone was delighting in her misfortune. "What is this?" I felt goosebumps as I saw it. Without knowing who did it, filled with fear, I quickly hid the photo in my pocket and closed the coffin lid. During the funeral, I discreetly observed the attendees, but no one seemed suspicious. The only oddity was my father-in-law, who, despite it being his wife's funeral, didn't shed a single tear. Isn't Dad sad? Could it be? I instinctively clutched the pocket where I had put the photo. While I could understand some hidden animosity in their often quarrelsome relationship, I couldn't be sure. Could it really be him? I planned to observe my father-in-law a bit more. But after the funeral, I accidentally overheard a conversation between him and my husband. Unaware of my presence behind the living room door, they spoke in raised voices. "Hey Dad, where's Mom's life insurance policy?" "Why do you ask?" "It's a lot of hassle to claim it." "Let me handle it for you." "Who's the beneficiary?" "That's none of your business. You won't get a penny from it." "What?" "I'll find it no matter what." Despite Ben's offer to help, his father was unyielding. Anger was evident in Ben's rejected voice. After my father-in-law left the room, Ben hit the sofa cushion, cursing. As I wondered how to console him, he muttered something unexpected. "After all the effort of bringing gifts every time, Dad still needs to be sorted out." In that moment, a chill ran down my spine. Life insurance, the photo with the "thank you for going to the other world" message, and my husband's ominous words. I started gathering evidence. More to prove that the person in my mind wasn't the culprit than to find the actual perpetrator. But the more I dug, the more it became an undeniable fact that this person was the guilty one. A few days after the funeral, I confronted him. "I want you to look at this photo." I showed him the photo, which he stared at intently. "What is this? Who would do such a thing to Mom's face?" His feigned innocence was apparent as I flipped the photo over, showing the message on the back. "The handwriting in thank you looks a lot like yours." I then presented another piece of evidence. A birthday card from Ben to me with "thank you" written in a strikingly similar style. "It's just your imagination, Ava." "What are you trying to say?" he countered. "That's not all. It seems you had borrowed a significant amount of money from your mother, didn't you?" His usually kind smile vanished, replaced by a mask-like expression devoid of emotion. I gathered my courage and continued. "You were awfully concerned about your mother's life insurance, weren't you? Did you hear that from Dad? He really talks too much, always causing trouble." A heavy silence fell between us for a moment. "Please, tell me the truth. Do you think I killed my mother because I was in debt?" Suddenly, Ben laughed, sending chills down my spine, reminiscent of when I saw the torn photo of my mother-in-law. "Yeah, that's right. I sent her to the other world." Laughing, he pulled out a box cutter from his pocket. "Looks like you're next." The moment he stood up, I kicked the floor and bolted towards the door. Feeling that I would meet the same fate as my mother-in-law if I stayed, I dashed out frantically. "I can't believe Ben was actually the culprit. And that sudden change in him, I've never seen anything like it before." Fighting back the shock that threatened to freeze my thoughts, I kept running towards the police station, gasping for breath. Glancing back midway, I noticed that my husband was nowhere in sight. It seemed he had lost track of me. Actually, I have been a marathon runner since my student days and still actively participate in community marathons. Given this, even though Ben is a man, it would be impossible for him to catch up with me, especially since he's not accustomed to running. However, he might anticipate that I would head to the nearest police station and could be watching from somewhere. But if I can just get to the police, I'll be safe. Scanning the surroundings, I spotted a police box across the street. Rushing inside, I cried out for help, "Please, I'm being chased." Shockingly, the station was unmanned. "You've got to be kidding me," I thought, recalling that some stations might be without officers. In a panic, I grabbed the phone on the desk and hastily explained the situation to the officer on the other end. Looking outside, I saw my husband approaching. "Don't run away. Let's go home, Ava," he said, holding a box cutter in his right hand, grinning menacingly as he advanced towards me. "Stay away from me." I pleaded, darting out and hurling whatever I could find at him, empty cans, stones. I dashed into a nearby large park and, as he continued to pursue me, threw sand from a sandbox at him, which seemed to get in his eyes. Seizing the moment, I ran further, trying to escape. But, at a critical moment, I stumbled and fell. "This is the end. You can't escape now," my husband shouted roughly as he grabbed my arm. It seemed like a moment of absolute peril, but I managed to say, "Sorry, but I've bought enough time." Just then, police officers surrounded Ben. "Don't move. We've already received a report. Come with us quietly." The officers were already positioned around the park, ready for him. Ben tried to escape, but officers were behind him as well. Despite his attempts to resist, swinging the box cutter, he was quickly apprehended and arrested, stomping the ground in frustration. After his arrest, Ben received a guilty verdict and was sent to prison without the chance of parole. It turned out he had secretly become addicted to splurging in clubs and had borrowed money from his mother, lying to her and unable to repay. Annoyed by her demands for repayment, he planned her demise. He also had other debts and targeted his mother's life insurance for repayment. The gifts he gave her contained substances used in rodent extermination, disguised by their spiciness, which she never detected. He gradually increased the dose, leading to her untimely death. Upon hearing this, my father-in-law tearfully said, if I cried at Emily's funeral, she wouldn't be able to go to heaven peacefully. I never thought Ben could do such a thing. I visited my mother-in-law's grave. The sky was beautifully clear, like her gentle heart and the peaceful weather. Mom, I've avenged you. Please rest in peace. After telling her this at her grave, I quietly clasped my hands together and prayed for her. Following that, my father-in-law asked if I could take over the online shop my mother-in-law had been running. When I announced on her account that she had passed away and that I would be taking over the shop, I received words of condolence and encouragement from the shop's customers. Knowing how much she was loved by everyone made me feel incredibly happy, almost as if it were about my own accomplishments. Having taken over her shop, I resolved to create items that would live up to the quality of those she made. So today, as on every other day, I sit eagerly in front of my sewing machine, committed to honoring her legacy.